Hello and welcome back to Talk to Al Jazeera. I'm Nazanine Moshiri in Tehran. I've been speaking to the mayor of the capital, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. He's had some pretty strong views on his relationship with President Ahmadinejad as well as the post-election unrest. Now I'll be asking him about an issue that matters to everyone, the economy. Speaking to people here in Tehran, one of the biggest issues and problems they talk about to me as a journalist is inflation, unemployment, the worries they have about the Iranian economy. Do you agree with government policy right now on the economy?
من فکر می‌کنم بحث درستی است. یکی از مهمترین چالش‌های ما از بعد از جنگ تا کنون.
I think it's a very important issue. It's one of the challenges that people have had since the end of the war. The economy has been an issue that's affected people. Through a long-term program, we're determined to change the economy from state-owned to a private type. And this is one of the most important moves we're making. It definitely needs a lot of effort, so that those sections of the economy where the government pays subsidies, for example in the energy sector, these things become less burdensome for the government. We will have some problems, of course. The bill which has been sent to Parliament is now being finalised, and I'm sure will be ratified in line with this grand plan. Of course, I'm sure you know that the global economy and the economic recession we have all over the world has had its own effect and has added to the economic problems we have had, especially when it comes to inflation. And we think that in the future we could even have deflation. And the 10th administration of Dr. Ahmadinejad has this very important challenge of tackling these economic problems.
Let's talk about America. On October the 13th, 2008, you announced your support for dialogue with the United States, as suggested by President Barack Obama. You said, "I think the world community, the Iranian society and the US would benefit from such talks." A year on, do you still agree with that point of view?
من فکر می‌کنم بحث یک مقدار عمیق‌تر از این باشه. طبیعتاً من قبل از اینکه آقای اوباما در
I think we should go a bit deeper into this issue. Before Mr. Obama was elected as US President, I was in a meeting and I referred to a number of issues. I referred to this idea that maybe it's high time we change from confrontation between Iran and the US to competition between the two countries, that the two countries could treat one another as rivals. And then I realized that Mr. Obama in his campaign slogans had a similar approach, and when he was elected as president, he took some steps in that direction. When we look now, this is our feeling. Of course, he's recently said that there's this kind of dual approach or behavior vis-à-vis Iran. And I think this dual approach is a change from previous US policies. I think this is a very good change. And of course, at the same time, it might be a kind of contradiction of certain policies the US president has been talking about. Please remember that Iranians have a negative view and memory of the role of the US in Iranian political affairs. I hope President Obama will move forward based on what he said in his pre-election campaign speeches, that he'll move down that path. And I'm sure this is something we can resolve through dialogue. But we do have two important issues to deal with when it comes to the US. One is related to the nuclear issue, and the next one, the relationship between Iran and the US. Iran's nuclear issue must be approached through the framework of the IAEA. Iran is committed to abiding by the laws of the IAEA and talking to the international community. But I think that the relationship between Iran and the US must be based to a large extent on goodwill.
همینطور که گفته میشه در عمل هم همین رفتار رو از سمت دولت آمریکا ببینیم فکر میکنم از طرف ایرانی مشکلی نباشه.
But what you're saying contradicts what the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, said just before the 4th of November. He said, he casted doubts on the talks when he said that Iran will not be fooled by the superficial conciliatory tone of the United States. And he also said that every time they have a smile on their face, they're hiding a dagger behind their back. Very different from what you're saying.
من فکر میکنم این موضوع در تناقض نیست. یعنی این باید صداقت در بیان.
Well, I don't think there's any contradiction here. I think that what we're looking for is honesty in what American politicians are saying.
اوباما در همین سنگاپور در سفر به آسیاشون.
When President Obama, during his trip to Asia and Singapore, calls for a dual approach towards Iran and then says that Iran should accept what the US says or face action, do you think that sort of talk is compatible with the competition approach I've been talking about? Definitely when we talk about dialogue and when we talk about two parties negotiating based on mutual respect, if you have threats behind that dialogue, what do you expect will happen? The problem with the US is that Americans have always tried to say that our discourse is the proper discourse and you have to accept what we say. This isn't dialogue, this is a monologue. This is a one-way flow of ideas, and I think these are the things that must be resolved. If you look at the previous US administration, Bush was always using the unilateral approach. We can see what the Middle East looks like and the result of that approach. Do we have security now or development in the region?
Do you think there'll ever be a situation where Iran and America can sit down and talk at the highest levels?
من فکر می‌کنم شرایط امروز ما با آمریکا نسبت به گذشته بهتر شده. یعنی من فکر می‌کنم روزی شاید هیچ موقع در
I think that today's relationship between Iran and the US is much better than maybe in the past. In the past, we would never have thought we'd be sitting round a table with American officials. But now we've had negotiations where Americans were party. In Geneva recently, Iran and the US had direct talks over Iran's nuclear issue. I think that if Mr. Obama is steadfast in what he's said, and if he doesn't surrender to Zionist lobby pressure, and if he is not influenced by similar sorts of pressure, he is able to open this door of dialogue. That will be something that will serve international security and will be in the interest of the countries of the region. But if Mr. Obama changes track and in practice doesn't take a constructive approach, the same old story will continue.
در عمل اقدامات دیگری اتفاق بیفته فکر می‌کنم همون بی‌اعتمادی گذشته ادامه پیدا خواهد کرد.
You ran for presidency in 2005, and the rumor here in Tehran is that you're amassing senior political advisors, various top advisors around you, because you want to prepare yourself to run for presidency in the future. What's your response to that?
من فکر می‌کنم که دولت دهم هنوز چند ماهی بیشتر نیست کارش رو شروع کرده و طبیعتاً 4 سال آینده دولت
I think that the 10th administration has only been in office for just a few months. And we have 4 more years to go, and the current administration will be in office and performing its duties. There are many variables and factors that can be of influence. So any kind of prejudgment about the future will be a little bit premature.
کارشناسی شده‌ای نباشه. طبیعتاً جریانات به شدت در حال تغییر هستند.
There are shifts. And as a politician, someone who's in this political scene, moving with political currents, I will be observing and monitoring the situation. So, let's wait and see what the future brings. Then we will decide.
بذاریم آینده تصمیم بگیره که چگونه عمل خواهد شد. مثل همین انتخابات.
For example, before the election and people were nominating themselves, many approached me and said, "You need to be nominated," and they encouraged me to do so. But when I looked at the facts on the ground, I realized I shouldn't volunteer. And I think that after the election and what happened, those people realized that I had made a good decision. So I'm observing, I'm monitoring what's happening, and we'll let the future decide.
من با دقت شرایط رو در واقع دارم رصد میکنم و طبیعتاً همه چی رو واگذار میکنیم به اتفاقاتی که در پیش رو هست.
So you're not ruling it out?
من توضیح دادم، گفتم طبیعتاً من در این
Well, as I explained, I am a politician, and naturally I will be thinking about this. I want people and other politicians in Iran to understand my point of view.
دیگر برجستگان سیاسی کشور.
Okay, Mayor Ghalibaf, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
I also thank you and all the viewers of Al Jazeera.